record. All right. Today I have with me Will Paden from Soaring Eagle Imaging. Soaring Eagle Imaging has been a partner of ours for the past, about year and a half, on many different regards. Will is their founder, CEO, long, extensive resume. I'll let him talk a little bit about that in the past, but the purpose of this is to give SEI a platform to talk about what they do, what they offer, and what they will be offering, and work they've done in the past, other partners that they have, and the direction that they're heading in relation to being a drone service provider in the electric utility space and much others. So without further ado, I'll turn it over. Will, if you don't mind, give a quick background on kind of who you are, who is SEI, and how SEI became something that you wanted to start.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Kyle. A little background about myself. I've got about 20 years of general aviation and military aviation experience, particularly in the helicopter realm. I'm a A&P mechanic for the FAA. I'm also a ATP-rated helicopter pilot. A few thousand hours operating between military and civilian, Part 135, Part 91. Very diverse background in aviation. Our team is built on aviation experience, aviation credentialing, aviation knowledge is very critical to what we do, because we believe Soaring Eagle is a aviation company that utilizes unmanned technology to perform our work. This is really important when you start talking about safety. With 20 years in aviation, safety is obviously a big part of everything we do. It's how we formulate everything from our SOPs to our training manuals to our training material. Everything's based around aviation safety, and it's very important. We have roughly 30,000 helicopter hours within our organization and nearly 100 years of manned aviation experience. We're going on about 5 years now that we've been operating UAS. We've operated everywhere from Maine to Florida to California in the last couple of years. Quite a few different customers throughout that territory. Been involved with some of the biggest projects, over the last year as UAS has really taken off. So.
Right. And again, I'm not sure what you're able to talk about due to the customer base that you have in
Right.
the utility world. I know that projects and customers are sometimes hush-hush, and I know sometimes I pull on you for data sets coming off our platform for other customers of ours, and the ability to do so is somewhat limited. So we'll respect that throughout the course of this conversation. But
yes, sir.
I know firsthand, because I've helped you fill some of those contracts with pilots. I know firsthand, some of the work that you've done out in California,
Right.
for different utilities out there. Obviously, we're very involved in the stuff you have going on in Maine. One of the things I wanted to talk about today, now that we're almost coming up, it's the end of April, so we're almost coming up on the 1 year of you guys, of our joint press release regarding the 51-mile BVLOS mission you guys did last year in Louisiana.
Yep.
So again, leave out whatever you have to leave out, but let's talk a little bit about that. And I know that SEI has how many ECOA approvals, not just with our stuff, but in total, how many
we're
ECOA approvals for BVLOS?
almost 40 now.
Okay.
In just the last year. Well, last 15 months now.
Gotcha. Okay. How many approvals is that with our aircraft, the VTOL? About half?
Over half. I don't know the exact number off the top of my head, but it's over half.
Okay.
Yep.
So for those listening or watching down the road that don't know what we're talking about, SEI performed a 51-mile beyond visual line of sight inspection over a flooded out area in Louisiana for one of their major utility customers. They did so in about 6 hours, and the mission was split up into 3 flights, correct?
It was 4 flights, actually.
Four flights. Okay.
4 flights.
So what was the longest radius from GCS during that? Somewhere around 8 or 9 miles?
I think it was just shy of 8. It was 7 something.
Okay. So
Yeah.
Talk to me a little bit about how that came about, the ECOA process, and what gives SEI the advantage in times of emergency to be able to respond like that, and other emergency scenarios that you guys have responded to in the past?
Right. So we had done quite a few ECOAs building up to that particular mission. Um, and the FAA knew, based on previous conversations with myself and some of the other team members, that obviously we're very aviation oriented. We had done it and we'd been very safe doing it for the same customer. So going into this mission, when we requested such a long track of land to be put into a TFR so we could fly, they were not near as hesitant as they had been in the past, because we had that relationship going. So we put in the ECOA. We received it about 6 hours later. We're able to mobilize the team, get them down on station because of our proximity. We're based out of Jackson, Mississippi, so it was about a 4-hour drive roughly to get down there. We got set up. We were able to establish vantage points using some of the levee systems down there. So we're able to elevate our GCS reference based on the aircraft and the trees and all the other potential hazards that we'd be running into. Used aviation mission planning, performed the mission, and we were successful in covering 51 miles, like you said, in about 6 hours. Took the data set, had the data set turned around same day. So the utility had usable data that same day. I mean, it was not instant, but it was very quick that we're able to turn around so much data.
Right. And so one of the things I also wanted to touch on briefly, if not extensively, is the actual data management part of SEI and what you guys do. Because obviously you guys are extremely well versed on mobilizing in order to collect the data. But what happens after? And a lot of the times that's a differentiating factor for a lot of companies is what do you do with the data after? Talk to me a little bit about Aspect. Talk to me about what created the platform of Aspect and what you guys use to mold the features of it.
Yep. And just to hit on the last question just a little more. Yeah. So having the military background and all that, our ability to respond to disasters and other times like that, we understand the dynamics of the airspace. We understand the dynamics on the ground because we've actually had to deploy for post-hurricanes and other such events. So we use all that information to build out our deployment plans. And on the data, that's very sensitive, right? Because when you're out in an area that you may not have good cell service, or you may not have the ability to hook up to a good Wi-Fi to push data, how do you move data? We have a couple different solutions. We've got all the way down to something as simple as we take the data off the aircraft. We use our proprietary software Aspect that was written by my partner, Charlie. And we can process the data in the field from one of our mobile command centers that y'all have provided us. We run our software, it geo tags the information. We have customizable reports that we can export out of this. It even takes the data, the images, and it names them based on GIS data that's provided to us. So we can provide our customers the data to make their decisions in a timely manner because our data is useful. So we do things like we have hard drives. We can physically drive that data wherever we need it. We also have the ability from our mobile command centers to upload data. So depending on the customer, depending on what their back-end availability is, we can customize our delivery solution. We fully understand the implications of maintaining secure data. Quite a few of us in the company maintain government secret clearances because of our military affiliation. So we understand the concept and we understand the importance of protecting our clients' data. It may be just a picture to somebody, but to the wrong person, it could be used as a tool against them. So it's very important that we maintain the control of that data.
Gotcha. Okay, so let's put I'm going to put a scenario out there, and this is going to put you a little on the spot, but I think that'll be good for the conversation. So let's just say you and I are friends of 20 years. I'm starting my own drone service providing company on the other side of the country. We sit down for a beer together. What advice do you give me about starting my company?
Pick the industry that you want to go after and learn the industry. So if you want to fly in the electric utility world, learn how the electric utility world works, right? Because what you're providing to that customer, it has to be valuable to them. You can't just be, I want to go fly electric utility lines. Well, why do you want to fly them? That's why we developed Aspect, because just taking pictures, if I give you 10,000 pictures of utility structures, it means nothing to you. But if I give you 10,000 pictures in a GIS database where you can look at each asset, it means something. So we had to learn that to a certain extent the hard way. So pick the space you want to operate in. There's going to be a lot of different avenues for UAS operations. I mean, we are just at the very forefront of what can UAS be used for. So pick that, learn about it, and then research your aircraft. You know, I mean, that's a huge investment. It's probably the second biggest investment in your company is your equipment. Obviously, first is your personnel. Has to be you have to pick the right personnel because the equipment's very expensive. You don't want just anybody flying your equipment. So picking the proper equipment, that's one of the reasons our strategic partnership is working out so well. We're flying your aircraft, you know, literally all over the country and performing extremely long BVLOS operations, covering lots of ground. And it's because of our partnership, and we've selected what I feel like is the right aircraft. You know, those are probably the two biggest things that I would tell somebody to start with.
Okay, that's excellent. So find a problem and master the solution.
Pretty much, yeah.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
All right, so that'll kind of segue into one of the bigger portions of what I wanted to talk about, which was training and the offerings that SEI has in terms of training packages for the electric utility space and beyond. You had mentioned that equipment's expensive. You know, you can even go all the way down to, you know, a Mavic be a couple $1,000s. It's a couple $1,000s. It's still not exactly small potatoes, but obviously when you start getting into BVLOS and VTOL fixed wing aircraft in general,
right,
you start talking about tens of thousands of dollars.
Mm-hmm.
So the right person flying the right equipment, the right person, in order to become the right person, has to be trained. Talk to me a little bit about the in-house training program that SEI puts their own pilots through, and some of the training packages that you guys are offering now, and how that'll evolve over time as regulations mature.
That's right. So again, going back to the aviation experience, right? I keep going back to it, but there's a reason. So we knew very early on that because this is an aviation industry, training was going to be very important. So we developed our own internal 40-hour qualification course. Every one of our pilots that goes in the field is required to go through this 40 hours. Our director of training, Nathan Albert, he developed most of the course curriculum. And so what we do is we require all our pilots to, at the end of the course, take a written test and a comprehensive operational test. And by comprehensive, I mean we require them to do everything from the risk assessment to the completion of the flight and processing the data, right? Because that's very important. So we have developed, based on that, a training program that we are now starting to offer outside of SEI. And we take all of our lessons learned. We can modify our training program because, again, we wrote this curriculum. It's internal to us. We can modify for a particular utility if they want us to train on something particular, like an aircraft, an operation. We have extensive experience in transmission, distribution, storm response, doing comprehensives on all of that, flood monitoring, a very extensive background, right? So we can modify our training program. We can shorten it or we can lengthen it to whatever need the customer has. And we're in the process of finalizing our BVLOS program that we're going to be offering. And what that's based on is, again, the aviation mindset. So I equate the initial qualification to like having a private pilot's license through the FAA. And as you move up in experience and capabilities in the FAA's eyes, you would move up to your commercial rating. Well, for us, that's going to be BVLOS. And so we're working on establishing a training facility here near Jackson, Mississippi, that will be teaching all of these courses. We're hoping to have some announcements coming out in the near future on that training facility, specializing in electric utility, search and rescue, first responders, different courses for that. It's going to be in-house to us. We're going to develop all this curriculum with some industry experts. We're even installing de-energized infrastructure to perform these inspection training on.
That was my very next question was,
Yep.
will there, is this going to be wide open land, or is there going to be some sort of real life scenario based training going down at this? How many acres is the training center?
It's going to be 40 acres.
Okay, gotcha.
Yep, 40 acres. Out in the opening, we're going to have distribution and transmission assets being built. They're just de-energized. So look, feel, taste like a real thing, but the safety, right? I mean, you don't have to worry about contacting or damaging the company's assets if you don't have your own training facilities. And there's a lot of utilities out there that do not have those capabilities. And so that's what we're looking at establishing and getting set up and going real soon. For now, we're traveling to the customers as needed. And so that it's working out. There's a lot to learn. I bring that up because this is such an emerging technology and a new industry within aviation. It's not all out there yet. So we're taking all of our lessons learned. I think we've flown a little over 4,000 structures in the last year, if I remember correctly.
That was going to be another question I had for you was, do you have some sort of ballpark figures off the top of your head? How many distribution, how many miles, how many transmission structures, those sort of questions.
Right.
It's a lot.
Yeah. We've flown a lot of structures. Some of that's in storm response. Some of it's all the way to comprehensive. So, you got to look at the breakdown. It's kind of boring. Nobody really wants to hear that, right? But we've covered about 4,000 structures in the last year.
Okay. So quickly going back to the training, let's say that I'm a enterprise UAS program manager, whether that be pipeline or power line. I know that there is a business case being built for the linemen, training mass amounts of linemen to have another tool in their toolbox, the old cliche, but to train these linemen on how to operate something simple, just to pop up, get a good look, bring it back down, give them another set of eyes from up top. Now, all of a sudden you have 50, 100, 150 linemen to train, and I'm responsible as the enterprise program manager to train them. Well, I have a choice. Do I want to tackle this in-house or do I want to outsource it? Let's say that I want to outsource it, and my first call is Will Paden from Soaring Eagle Imaging. How do we set that up, and what can you offer the enterprise community for training these linemen or training whoever, their pilots in-house to do this sort of work tomorrow? What can you offer them tomorrow to spool up a larger program and scale?
Right. So there'll be a couple questions. If you want to 100% outsource it, we would establish the first thing would be the timeline. When do you want the first one operational and when do you want the last one operational? Because that's going to drive quite a few factors, right? Number of instructors I need to provide, which we have right now. We have 4 instructors, 4 qualified instructors. We're working on more. It's not an easy process for us to select an instructor because you can't just take a civilian instructor, CFI, and train them, how to fly drones around electric utilities. And you can't just take a drone guy and have them be a trainer. So we actually require our instructors to be at a minimum the FAA ground instructor rating. And that's important because we don't train just 107. We train aviation knowledge. So we make sure to cover weather. Even though it's electric utility, we make sure to cover weather, airspace, crew resource management, aeronautical decision making. Those factors, even though you may just be popping up to look at one structure, you still need to understand, where am I just popping up at? We teach, how to operate around the land system, how to operate DJI around the land system, because for those out there that have operated DJI and controlled airspace, understanding the process of how to unlock it so the aircraft will even actually fly. Just walking through those steps. Well, when I pop up, God forbid the worst thing happens, the aircraft decides to fly to the next county over, and I have no control over it. Well, you need to understand, as that 107 pilot, where's the airspace? Where am I going? Who do I need to call? Mm-hmm. So it's a lot more than just being a drone pilot or 107 pilot for us. So it's very important that I explain that to any potential customers. Are there cheaper solutions? Are there quicker solutions? Yes. But the quality of training that we provide is on par with aviation, which that's what this asset is, right? I
Right.
mean, 107 is aviation, FAA aviation. So our typical intro for a electric utility lineman is it's a approximate 4.5 day process. And in that, by the end of it, we actually do a hands-on performance evaluation. We give you a certificate saying you have met all of these requirements. This is the training that you have gone through. We have a syllabus, and we then, if you want, we'll set up annual recurrent. Well, what is annual recurrent? For those that don't understand it, is general aviation out there. Every year you take a check ride if you're doing commercial operations, just to validate that you're up on the proper regulations. You know, you're aware of the things that are changing. Really important with 107 is, we all know, it's changing so fast, right? So part of our recurrent course is what has changed since last year? What's the latest and greatest? What are the trends we're seeing in safety? You know, aircraft management, that kind of thing. We talk about those trends. And then we do things like, okay, written test. It's not a 107 test, but here's a written test just to make sure people are still up on their skills, because like you were talking about, and you bring up a really good point. So these companies are training linemen as an additional tool, but not to be a 107 pilot.
Right.
So it's very easy to forget some things throughout that year, right? Because if you're only using it once a week or once every couple of weeks, it's easy to lose those skills. So just to ensure they're operating properly, because every 2 years your 107 expires, well, you're just taking a test. You're not actually flying that thing, right? So we offer a recurrent. We manage that program. You can have us manage that program down to, hey, you tell me when Kyle needs to be recurrent. And we'll send you an email 30 days prior, 6 days prior, whatever you want us to do. We can go from a full management of your training program to we can customize. Maybe you want to do some of it internal. Maybe you want to, outsource part of it. Again, because it's our curriculum, it's our established programs, we can modify it as the customer needs.
Okay. Is this training curriculum available for review? Because I know that speaking with program managers in the past, part of their job is to make sure that you're checking all the boxes that they'd want to check. You're dotting every I, you're crossing every T that they'd want to check. So I'm assuming NDA in place and all legalities are covered.
Right.
Is this curriculum available for review for them to send up the ladder and get approved in order to actually hire? You're able to share that curriculum with these folks upon request?
That's right.
Okay.
We have our syllabus, and then we have we don't share the actual slide decks.
Right.
So what we have is we have a syllabus that's expanded. And so it breaks down each section, what we talk about.
What gets covered.
And something to understand, a lot of our training is scenario-based and it's discussion-based. Because reading from a slideshow, we all been through that, right? You don't learn a whole lot.
Death by PowerPoint.
Death by PowerPoint. So one of the things that Nathan's established is he has scenarios. So you'll do a section on, say, airspace, right? That may be only a 20, 30-minute class. But how do you reinforce what you've learned? Is you go, okay, Kyle, bring up a sectional chart. Hey, you're right here on this map. What airspace are you in? And then it makes you start thinking, okay, well, what altitude am I at? Where am I flying? What direction am I going? Scenario-based reinforces the reading.
Right.
And we have found, not just we, I mean, you read it, the FAA's done how many studies on it now? Part of the ADM is, reinforcing it, right? So that's why a lot of our training is so scenario-based, is because of that. But our curriculum, we spell out, by section, these are the topics we cover. For instance, airspace, that's a real simple one. What is D, Class D airspace? What does it look like on a map? What are the colors associated? What are the requirements?
Right.
So we spell that out. And then there's some of the other stuff that, like how we fly around electric utility structures, we do suggestions. So we've, based on our experience, determined this is the safest way to operate around these lines, the patterns that we fly. But if the electric utility says, hey, this is the way we're going to do it, we'll train that. We'll evaluate it. We'll say, okay, that works. Because, let's face it, there's more than one way to skin a cat, as they say.
Yep.
So
do you have both options available for, you to send 2, 3, 4 instructors to Ohio for training and travel around Ohio for a month or so, train groups? And
Yep.
can they also just send groups of 10 at a time down to Jackson? Are
Yep.
both of those options available? And I'm sure logistically you have. I think we've talked in the past about relationships with like hotels and stuff in
That's
Jackson
right.
to set
That's
that
right.
and all that infrastructure. One thing I wanted to harp on is the infrastructure for SEI to conduct this training on behalf of the enterprise is in
Mhm.
place for the most part, correct?
That's right. That's
Okay.
right. It is. It is. We're constantly evolving, modifying our procedures and where we're training and all that because we're upgrading, right?
Right.
Um, when you do something for the first time, there's not a blueprint for it.
Yep.
And to my knowledge, this doesn't exist. I may be wrong, but I've yet to find it. To build a training facility to the caliber we're building it, with the infrastructure in place, I can't find one. And so it's taking time. We're having to figure stuff out. But yes, we do. We do today. We can send contact teams out, or we can have them train here. One of the other things I forgot to mention is we're looking at. Let's say you're talking about being the UAS program director. Let's say I want to train these 30 pilots, but then I want you to stick around and I want you to help implement the validation period, right?
Right.
So yes, they're qualified, but we're working on a program now where I could leave one of the instructors or have them come back a week at a time and go out and do actual field experience with these
Right.
newly trained pilots, because that's reinforcing, right? You learn it in training, but if you're not using it every day,
Yeah.
maybe you need these guys to just take them out for a day and just practice with them.
Right.
And I think that's going to be a big safety case going forward. Something else that I haven't heard anybody else talking about is we go out and we call them field checks, or in the FAA they call them line checks. FAA guy comes out and says, "Hey, let me see your documentation," just to make sure the guys are doing it right.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Like it's just that checks and balances.
Right.
Because as you as the program manager, you just invested a whole bunch of money into your people. Well, you want to make sure that money was invested properly, that they didn't just show up for a class, got out of work for a couple of days, and now they're back operating, doing their thing. You want to ensure that you got your money's worth. So one way that we're seeing that we could do that is we can send out some of our personnel. Of course, all of our people, they're very familiar with how to operate around electric utility lines, the safety requirements, PPE and all that. So going out on the actual live line, we don't see that being an issue with most of these companies.
Cool. Whew. Well, all right.
Yeah.
I have pretty much no questions left for you.
Okay, good.
If there's anything that you would like to touch on before we wrap this up, feel free. The floor is yours. Got a couple minutes here. I wanted to try and keep it somewhere close to 30 minutes.
Yeah.
I have no clue if we're beyond that or not, but
Right.
if you have anything else you'd like to share, kind of maybe what's next for SEI,
Right.
if you want to touch on how, what you might have learned throughout the past 2 months, this whole, the global pandemic that's gone on, how it's impacted you, what's next, how you see everything shaping out, what do you see as the future of, the future of the service provider? What's your prediction for 5 years from now? Feel free. The floor is yours.
Yeah, it's exciting. Having watched the UAS market since 2012, when I first started getting into it, to where it is today, a little bit slower than we all thought. We thought it'd take off a lot faster, but I mean, it's very exciting. The manufacturers out there developing payloads and aircraft that really fit into what we're trying to do. The experience level of operators is really growing, that was a big hurdle we had to get through over the last couple of years. Just finding people that can fly these things safely, that's a big deal. I really see in the next probably 3 to 5 years, the UAS industry is going to really shake up the way a lot of people look at a lot of different industries. But obviously, we've talked a lot about electric utility, but the emergency management, that's out there, all the fire and the police and the sheriffs and, post disasters. And I think that industry is going to be huge as far as the use of and the capabilities that these UAVs are providing. I mean, look how small thermal cameras have gotten just in the last couple of years. It used to be handheld video recorders. Now you're looking at something the size of the mouse on your desk.
Mhm.
So it's a very exciting time. SEI, we're trying to poise ourselves to be one of the premier operators, not in just the U.S., but international. We have a couple of customers we're starting to talk to internationally. I know you're well aware of one of them for sure. And so, looking at all the potential opportunities that are out there, just trying to manage the expectations on the customers, educating the customers at what can be done today and what's coming in the future. That's a big challenge for a lot of people out there. But I believe it's something that the industry is. I talk about it all the time. It's going to shake a lot of industries almost as much as smartphones shook the phone industry.
Right.
I mean, I think it's going to be that big of a paradigm shift. And as a helicopter guy myself, it's going to eliminate some jobs. I know that's a fact that's out there. Is it going to eliminate all helicopters? No, there's no way. It's a niche. It's a tool, like you said, it's a tool in the toolbox. So, yep, that's my vision. That's where I kind of see things going.
That was one of the, and I'll wrap up by saying that was one of the things that I thought was the most interesting when we first started talking a year and a half ago, was the fact that you guys are all Black Hawk pilots. You guys are all helicopter pilots to start with, and I know at least I'm pretty sure more than just you on your team are still involved with the National Guard in Mississippi.
Right.
It was interesting to see because people, some people think that there's a helicopter versus drone debate going on about, the one community looking negatively at the other. But
Right.
it's interesting to see a company full of helicopter guys still doing both. I mean, you guys get called out. You guys still get called out for guard duty all the time, but and then jumping back in the truck, driving back to Jackson and flying lines for major electric utilities
Right.
with drones. So
Yep.
anyway, I thought that was one of the interesting oxymorons when we first started talking, was kind of how diverse you guys are and the experience that the organization has together.
Yep.
A lot of experience for an organization that doesn't have 100 employees,
Right. Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
You would think that when you hear the hours count for you guys, that you guys are an organization over 100. I mean, that's not the case. I thought that was also another exciting thing. So anyway,
That's
Will,
right.
I appreciate your time, and I know that you and I are doing a lot of work together, and you and I, Census and Soaring Eagle Imaging, are doing a lot together in the past and certainly moving forward. So we'll look forward to all things BVLOS in the future and larger international opportunities and everything abroad.
Yes, sir. I appreciate your time, Kyle.
Thank you, sir.